Good to see everybody again. As I stated in the program description, you guys have seen my slide presentation for diesels in the 1980s, steam in the 1980s. While we were shooting all those still pictures and slides, we were also taking video. So we've got hours of video, and what I've done is just put together a little montage of, some of the stuff that we shot through the 80s. I did some of this video. My wife Susan took some of this video, and my brother Greg, who lives down in Matthews, took some of this video. It's not the best quality video because it's 1980s VHS technology. Plus, I made a copy to get it on a disc. But the content is just terrific. The sound is really important. The sound is really good. And the fun that we had doing this, I get a kick out of it every time I see it. It's 40 years ago now. But 40 years ago, not only was there just VHS quality or 8 millimeter, but you had no cell phones, you had no Google Maps. This became a project for me, every time there was a trip. And I don't know who else in this room back in the 80s when the Norfolk Southern program was in full steam, but we would plan trips, throughout the year. I'd get the schedule and, hey, we're going to do this and this and this. And we would I had a full set of Virginia county maps from the Highway Department. And southern West Virginia as well. We'd sit down with a map. Here's where the trip was going to be from point A to point B. We'd look at the map, estimate the time it would take for the train to get from point A to point B or anywhere in between, and find on the map, okay, I think we can make this cutoff. I think we can beat it here. If we do this, we can beat it here. I did broke a few speed limits along the way. But fortunately, we had no major incidents, and we did this a lot. And it wasn't just, hey, 611 or 1218 or 765 is going to run. We're going to take this shot. Maybe we'll get another shot. We would spend a whole weekend. We would drive up to Huntington, West Virginia for the New River train, spend Friday night, ride the train on Saturday, spend the night, chase it on Sunday, and drive home. Or sometimes we'd go up and chase both days. The New River train ran from Huntington, West Virginia to Hinton, eastbound, and then would turn around and go back to Huntington. It was a full day. They left Huntington 7:38 in the morning, and they didn't get back sometimes until 9 or 10 that night because it was just a long day. The first part of this has to do with the New River trains. The nickel plate Berkshire 284-765 ran the New River trips a lot in the 80s, and we went up there a lot to ride and to photograph. The first thing you'll see, one of the New River train was powered by the Seaboard system ABB diesels. And that's the first clip you'll see. And then after that, a lot of 765, the nickel plate Berkshire. Like I said, it ran from Huntington to Hinton, came through Charleston, and you'll see a segment, if you've driven that Interstate 77 going up toward Charleston, 77 parallels the railroad just south, coming out of Charleston going south. What you'll see here is me driving and Susan hanging out the window doing the pacing shots coming down Interstate 77. There's a lot of different things. I'll make some comments as we go, but I wanted you just to enjoy the video and enjoy the sound.
Was Interstate 77 open?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Because I thought they didn't open that till about 88.
No, it was still, it was the West Virginia Turnpike before, and there's part of it still a toll road, but no, it was Interstate 77 coming south out of Charleston. You'll see in the pacing shots a car between us on the interstate and the train on 60 in between. But you'll also hear on the 765 part of this, the nickel plate Berkshire, they often ran two different whistles on that engine. The higher pitched whistle that you'll hear is this typical nickel plate whistle. The lower tone whistle you'll hear on some of this, best of my memory, is off of a C&O Hutchison from somebody's collection that they put on the engine. So you'll hear two different tones, whistle tones, which is kind of neat. And there's a segment on 1218 coming out of the museum in Roanoke, and then some shots of it in service. But it's just a variety of things. A diesel excursion on the Clinchfield, you'll see some of that. But we were just having a good time. We just enjoyed the scenery, enjoyed the planning of putting all this together. I wish I could go back with digital equipment. We had the opportunity, some of the stuff that we'd never get a chance to photograph again, but it's still fun to watch, and I hope you guys enjoy it. You go ahead and turn that off. This is Stretcher Neck Tunnel near Prince, West Virginia.
Sound is great.
This is the train going back westbound coming out of Hinton. There's Susan coming out of the bushes. This is just east of Huntington in Barbersville.
Was that thing usually full of passengers? Is that thing usually full of passengers?
Sold out every year. 30 plus cars every year. Now you see the sun was shining when the diesels ran, and then the clouds came in when the steam engine ran. But that's okay. The nickel plate 765 has a real sharp exhaust.
Is a train coming?
It's a good video. Is that a hill? That's climbing?
lot of smoke. Wow.
It's early in the morning and it's cold.
Is that a grade that they're going up?
I'm not sure of the profile of the railroad at this point. This is one of our favorite spots. This is Hurricane, West Virginia. And just listen to the exhaust on this. He is rolling.
And that's full of passengers?
Yes, sir. That's coming out of Charleston. And so you had to know when to break off and get ahead of it to get to the exit. Now here's Thurman, West Virginia. This was in the obviously in the early 80s when all the old engine facility, the engine house, everything was still there. And this was
Thurman is the smallest Amtrak stop in the United States.
yeah, it's a flag stop, yeah, for the Amtrak. You can see they still had there's the post office of Thurman.
What year was this?
This was all in, 84, 85, 86, This is a combination. It's not all the same year, the same trip. It's stuff I put together for couple different trips. But
Everybody's working so hard.
But you still had the water plug, you still had the engine house, and that was the depot before the Park Service came in and restored and painted the depot. And the engine house, which you'll see here in a minute, unfortunately mysteriously burned down in 1993 before it could be preserved and stabilized.
So the rest is still there.
But you go there now and it's pretty much, there's one track that R.J. Corman uses and the main line, everything else is pretty much grown up. Nature is reclaiming it. And I don't remember what time of night this was, but this is the return to Huntington. This is coming back through Hurricane, West Virginia. Just the sound, I recorded it just for the sound. And that's the eastbound Cardinal. And this is in Barbersville, and a typical, morning up there around the river, early morning, a lot of fog. That shot, he's coming into St. Albans, which is a station stop. They pick up passengers. And this is him leaving St. Albans. Oh, yeah, yeah. And this is Handley, West Virginia, which used to be a terminal midway between Ashland, Kentucky, and Hinton.
Are these trains still running?
Oh, no.
The steam trains aren't running, but you can still ride the Cardinal along this route.
Yeah.
It's not going to be quite as exciting.
And I chose to get the shot on the inside of the curve, not anticipating a freight train, so I got stuck until he cleared. Fortunately, just down the road, they stop at Montgomery, West Virginia for water. So I was still able to get ahead of him.
What's that caboose doing on there?
They were still required at that point in the 80s.
You don't see that anymore.
And no graffiti on the freight cars. This is Deepwater, West Virginia, where the Virginian went over the C&O. This is when you could still ride in the open vestibules. Susan can tell you I never sat down. I bought a ticket, but I stood in the vestibule all day. Here's a trip on the Clinchfield with a familiar diesel on the head end. The Atlantic Coastline E3 that's at Spencer. This is coming through Spruce Pine, North Carolina.
It's getting the Morse code.
And a little bit of footage of 611 during that time. I kind of just threw a little bit in. This is Lowry, Virginia, between Roanoke and Lynchburg, where they always had a photo run by.
These guys on the bridge are about to get a shower.
All those people are looking at the train?
Most of them were actually on the train that got off to do the photo run by. And for those who've never been able to stand in the vestibule behind 611, this is at Shawsville, Virginia, just west of Roanoke. This is still on climbing the Christiansburg grade west of Roanoke. This is at Vicar, Virginia, again west of Roanoke. Frank Collins was the engineer. He was the regular engineer for most of the 80s.
That's an overhead coaling tower in the background.
That's still there?
Yes.
Yeah, still there.
Is it still in trouble?
Makes for a nice backdrop for photographs even now with regular diesel powertrains. This is in May of 1995. They're pulling 1218 out of the Wasena Park, the original Roanoke Transportation Museum. If you remember some of the slides that I had, this was in May of '85, and in November is when the flood of 1985 hit, and the museum was washed out, just covered in water. My brother was living in Roanoke at the time, and he shot this video for me.
This is the first time this locomotive has moved in almost 20 years, right, Steve?
Yeah, I guess it was put in '60 is when it was brought in from Steamtown.
Okay.
But you'll see the person riding in the engineer's seat in the cab is the CEO of Norfolk Southern, who is responsible for making this happen, Robert Clater.
Is he actually driving that or just sitting there?
Oh no, it's not under steam. He was not only the CEO of Norfolk Southern, but he was a big rail fan. And he made it possible for this engine and 611 to be rebuilt and put into excursion service. And just to give you an idea of the fan, he wanted to ride the engine out of the park. It took 2 years to rebuild it. This was in May of '85, and it finally came out for the first time in April of '87.
Why don't let them run?
The Virginia Museum of Transportation owns the line that train is on, but they haven't done anything with it, so it's kind of hard to see when you go visit it now.
Yeah, the Roanoke Belt Line.
Yeah.
This will give you a good shot of what the top of the engine looks like. And this engine ran for 5 years, from '87 to '92, and it was it went in for its 5-year inspection, and it was in pieces and being rebuilt, worked on, when Norfolk Southern decided to eliminate the steam program. And it's back in the museum in Roanoke now, and not all the pieces are on it that should be on it, but you can't really tell.
Yeah, this is the same locomotive. For those who made the field trip to Roanoke a couple of years ago, this is the same locomotive we saw in the underneath the shed there.
There's Mr. Robert Clater. getting his video camera.
What's that hose running down there?
That's the air line for the braking system. And the gentleman climbing down now is James Beislein. He was the head of the STEAM program for many years. He organized all the trips, coordinated with the local NRHS chapters. He was an attorney for the railroad. And then here's a shot of it being towed to Birmingham. This is coming through Thomasville. And I think, no, this is Jamestown. The next shot will be Thomasville. And here's its inaugural trip coming out of Salisbury across the Yadkin River Bridge.
How many years after the picture before?
2 years. May of '85. It was taken out in April of '87 is when these were taken. NW Hooter whistle. This is Lexington, northbound headed to Roanoke.
There was a sound recording made called Hooters on Blue Ridge. But it had nothing to do with what a lot of people consider Hooters now. So oh, is that Greensboro?
This is Elm Street in Greensboro. If you were, you ought to be standing right beside that engine when, very powerful whistle.
Essentially, just in locomotive chassis.
Yeah, it's an articulated engine, yes.
So how was that designed? You know how they
And this is,
create 4 or something?
this is the back road between Reedsville and Danville. It's going through Ruffin, toward Ruffin.
How many horsepower?
That's nicely beautifully framed.
At least 100 horsepower.
Yeah.
Nice photography.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah.
Is that your wife still outside the car?
Still hanging by the heels.
Steve, I don't see any problem taking this on the road. This is wonderful.
Yeah, I would tell her, don't worry what lane I'm in, just keep shooting. Because this is a 2-lane road. There's Ruffin, going through Ruffin.
I thought you were supposed to only blow the horn when you reach across it.
And this is the first time back on NW rails. This is near Bedford, headed into Roanoke. Along Highway 460. Yeah, somewhere, in that area. And climbing Blue Ridge for the first time since the late 50s. That little bridge is still there. It's still a nice place to shoot pictures from. And this was the first weekend of actual excursions to the public. And this is Ada, West Virginia, coming into Bluefield. This was the Saturday that had torrential rains and the railroad was flooded, signals were knocked out. This is the return trip. This is Oakville, West Virginia, coming down the mountain from Bluefield. And you'll see in a minute the level of the river. They had to go ahead of this train and spike switches to make sure that they were correct, because the power was out in a lot of places. Yeah. And the next shot is past Glen Lynn, West Virginia, shot from across the New River on Highway 460. And you can see the river, the level of the river. The next day was a completely different day. This is eastbound climbing the Blue Ridge grade where the old Blue Ridge passenger station used to be. This is Forest, Virginia, right outside of Lynchburg.
Gas station still there?
No, it's been burned down.
Yeah, it was torn down. Yeah,
No, it was gutted. It was gutted by a fire.
and there was a helicopter chasing this trip. This is just west of Christiansburg, a nice S-curve. And this was a freight that preceded 1218, but when 1218 got there, the helicopter was so low and so loud that I didn't even film it. No graffiti on the freight cars. Open top auto rack. And a caboose. Back at Shawsville, westbound out of Roanoke, climbing the grade at Shawsville. This was during the 1987 NRHS convention. This is the east end of Bluefield Yard. And 611's waiting for 1218 to bring the excursion train in, and then 611 takes the excursion train back to Roanoke. They turn 1218 in Bluefield and head back to Roanoke with hopper cars. This is in Narrows, Virginia. When 611 brought the passenger train back to Roanoke, they crossed over the New River at Narrows onto the former Virginian Railway and went into Roanoke on the Virginian.
Yeah, this bridge was built new in the late 1950s or early 60s, so they could sell the 460 to the state of Virginia to make 4 lanes out of west out of Glen Lynn, east out of Glen Lynn.
And then shortly behind that, 1218 with the hopper train. This is at Glen Lynn. There's your articulation. And this is coasting down the Christiansburg grade toward Roanoke. This is at Montgomery, Virginia, Montgomery Tunnel. That's 81, Interstate 81. Crosses over the railroad there. And that's the end. You get the light.
How fast were they going?
On the NW stuff or the New River stuff?
The New River stuff.
Oh, they were running track speed 60 plus. That shot of it coming through Hurricane at track speed, yeah, that was 60, at least 60. And that pacing him down 77 was the same thing. He was running about 60.
Can you recall any heart-stopping moments?
She probably can. Yeah. when she would look away from the camera and see what lane I was in and see what cars were coming toward us.
I couldn't look away. It was a big old camera.
Yeah, it's the old style big VHS cameras.
It's remarkable how well they transferred. I mean,
Is any of this stuff still running? Any of it?
611 is running.
So, diesel or steam, how are they handling this in today's world?
None of the Class 1 railroads are allowing steam on the main lines now.
Okay, so then it's
So like 611 just finished trips up in Virginia out of Stanton on the Buckingham branch. Almost everything that's running today is on tourist railroads or branch lines that are off of the main lines of CSX and NS, with the exception of Union Pacific is running the big boy on their main lines. But they have installed positive train control on the engine, the steam engine, and it will always run with a diesel to make the the positive train control work.
So, and there's no problem getting diesel fuel or any of that?
Oh no, yeah.
Okay.
But 765, the nickel plate engine, it still runs all the time up in Ohio and Michigan. The 611's running. It ran mainline until like 2017, while Wick Moorman was the CEO and still had say-so over what happened on his railroad. But once all the railroads switched over to positive train control, that the government made them implement, it's probably $100,000 installation just to put positive train control in a steam engine, and then you have to have a diesel that is compatible with it in the consist all the time. So to be able to see what we saw engines running by themselves at track speed on the main lines. I don't know that we'll ever see that again, except for, Union Pacific's doing it. But
What's that?
Well, in fairness to the Canadian Pacific, they are gonna be running their, what is it,
their Hudson, the
the Hudson.
2816, I
yeah,
believe.
the Hudson from like Vancouver to Mexico City in May. They're gonna be taking it all over their system. Now that'll have diesels, it probably has had PTC, put into it, but,
So, Dutch, is Amtrak doing the same thing?
no, Amtrak doesn't do any, steam at all.
Amtrak was sponsoring steam trips. They were providing the insurance
Really?
up until a few years ago, but then, then they got out of that. They said, hey, that's too much of a liability. So, I mean, you can imagine you got a train with 1,000 people on it. If you have an accident and half of those 1,000 decide to sue, for who knows how much, how much insurance do you do you have to have to cover something like that? It's just prohibitive.
How much training do the engineers go through, the ones that drive those trains?
Well, I mean, some of them were actually, folks that actually operated them when they were in service back in the 80s.
Oh, okay.
There's very few of those left now, but they've been training a whole younger generation of people to actually be able to work on these engines and operate them.
Who's training?
So
Who's training?
the crews that are particular to an engine, and there's companies that specialize in steam restoration.
Okay. All right.
Yeah. So
Yeah, there are definitely young people that are coming up the ranks in terms of.
Yeah, I mean, they still have the big lathes and everything to turn those wheels and whatnot. I mean, it's actually a trade that someone's actually using their hands with.
and there's shops scattered across the country that do specific work.
Yeah.
Like the Union, excuse me, the Union Pacific big boy that I'm talking about, the wheels for that engine when they were restoring it were done in Strasburg, Pennsylvania, at the shops in Strasburg. The Tennessee Valley Railroad Museum in Chattanooga does a lot of contract work for rebuilding stuff. So, but in 1994, when NS said we're stopping the steam program, their shop was in Irondale, Alabama, their steam shop for Norfolk Southern. And they stopped the program. They only gave like a 2-month notice to all the people that had invested time and equipment. And so in October, they announced that December was the end of the program, and they sold off everything at their shop in Alabama.
Wow.
So
It seems like the trade with your hands anymore is a thing of the past. No one works with their hands anymore. Unless it's a phone.
but that's what I'm saying. 1218 was in pieces being rebuilt when they announced the end of the program, and they just cosmetically put it back together and didn't put all the pieces back and hauled it back to the museum in Roanoke. So.